Hey everyone, ErikOnPaper here, and in case you hadn't figured it out, I'm Erik. And we're going to be starting our October Villains Month a little bit early, mainly because I love drawing villains and Halloween's one of my favorite times of year, with this requested character, Carnage. So, in my opinion, Carnage is easily one of the creepiest characters that Marvel has ever come up with. He has the strength of Venom, even actually is a little bit stronger in some stories, and is far more psychotic than Venom ever was. And God, I grew up reading a lot of stories featuring him. I remember one in particular, this Venom 4 part, where Carnage was like killing people through the internet. It was kind of weird, but I just really remember that story. And they gave him this really eerie voice in the animated cartoon. And yeah, so like with every drawing, I start to rough out the pose, see what I want, and for some reason, and I noticed this after I did the drawing, I kind of have villains raising their right hand, kind of beckoning you, uh, or just like almost like a weird challenge pose. I'm gonna try to change it up, but I noticed that way later. So anyway, yeah, with Carnage, one of the things whenever you're commissioned to do a character or requested to do a character is I look up what is the standout with each pose or each drawing. What elements do I have to retain that will make the character identifiable as Carnage? And one of those things is definitely the fact that he has all kinds of symbiote tendrils everywhere, just flaying out and overall looking wildly out of control. So I kept that. And another more stylized piece or decision I made now that we're getting into the coloring is that yes, Carnage is red with like black spots all over the symbiote, darker patches, and things like that, but his eyes were white, kind of like a creepy orca's eyes. And that's one of the things that I thought would be really visually striking is keeping the eyes just pure white, and it would allow me to render and detail a lot of other parts of the drawing. And as you can see, I decided to go with the Copic colored pencil method, just because I kind of wanted that richer effect, and working with the Copics and colored pencils in that way, I noticed with the reds gives a really vibrant, really rewarding look to it, or I should say rewarding to work with. I enjoy that richness, and how I would change it up this time was applying the inks over over the colors so we could get the natural blackness of Carnage and the darker spots of the symbiote in there. Now his teeth have different renderings. Sometimes they were uh, like black, like I chose to illustrate them, or sometimes they were, ivory colored white. And for me, black glistening teeth were just far creepier than just almost shark-like teeth. And yeah, so that's obviously what I went with here. And as per usual, when coloring in with reds, I try to go in with orange colors to help the highlights pop and really bring it to life. And going in here just with the black Copic marker, adding in some darkened areas for really deep shadows. That implies that, oh, the rest of his arm is behind his shoulder. It's not a stunted arm in any way. So is Carnage going to be in the Spider-Man 4 fan film? No, he isn't. There, people are afraid that we're villain heavy already, and even though the story supports them and they're not, Carnage and his story is just way too extreme to relegate him to a cameo or to add him into the movie. However, when Bryn and I have talked hypothetically about the possibility of a fifth movie, Bryn's brought Carnage up a couple times, and saying that, you know, there is that symbiote piece from Spider-Man 3, and we don't know what happened to it. And so if Spider-Man 4 is a success, then I would be very interested in putting Carnage in Spider-Man 5. But of course, that depends on how everybody likes 4 and how much fun we have making 4. Now, here with the art, I'm just going in and normally I like to work from dark to light, but that's when I've inked the drawing beforehand. When I am erasing my pencils, because if you put Copic ink over pencils, then it traps the graphite inside the page and you just can't erase it. After I erase, I look for the very faint outline, then I go on with my lightest color, and then start adding in dark colors over it, building it up that way. And, you know, whether you're working digitally or traditionally, art is just a series of layers. You know, unless you just do a pure pencil drawing. But even then, you have your rough line art that you erase and choose better lines or more refined, accurate lines to go over it if you're working with a sketch method. And here I actually started to close my eyes with these tendrils because the drawings initially looked a little too much like lightning, like I was drawing Thor or something. So I closed my eyes and got more organic, creepy shapes because even as random as you try to be, brains or the human brain will put things in a pattern, and that's not something that you really want in an alien creature. The randomness looks better and far creepier. Now, I had to come to a decision point with this drawing, and part of this video, I was debating editing it out or not, but then decided to keep it. I remember I had this Toy Biz figure of Carnage from the 90s, and one of the attachments he came up with was like this symbiote battle axe that could be put on the end of his arm. I tried drawing that in here, as you can see by that shape, but it just didn't read when I went to put the marker on it. In fact, it looked like a weird part of Carnage that wouldn't have made any sense, so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to make this background black to cover it. I did have it in the pencil and was undecided and thought, okay, well, I'm going to commit to the line. And then I realized that that was a mistake, so I covered over it with a ton of black ink and decided to make this piece a gradient. Now, my Copics were starting to run low, so I switched to a Micron brush pen and just started filling it in as finely as I could, not worrying too much about getting perfect with those lines, because if they're erratic looking and, well, it makes it look creepier and a lot more, you know, in the spirit of Carnage, I would say. But yeah, that was a ton of just inking the background, and if I had to do it over again, I'd probably just do it digitally. But you know, one thing about art and one thing I like about traditional art is that you have to adapt to your mistakes and you have to live with it and overcome. And I think that's a really good tool to have in your arsenal. Now, here's where I put the inks over everything to get the kind of membrane effect like I discussed earlier. There's my Pentel pocket brush. And I'm not usually doing my normal style of rendering, which is a lot of hatching and cross-hatching. I kind of wanted to try something different. So after I added the veiny texture, then just go in with the colored pencils, I use Faber-Castell pencils, and just go in and start adding in highlights, refining colors, really getting that richness in there. And pretty soon we're going to have the very creepy Cletus Cassidy Carnage finished, and I am really, as a side note, looking forward to what Woody Harrelson will do with the character, because he's a fantastic actor. Woody Harrelson isn't sponsoring this. Yeah, so this piece used a lot of my resources, a lot of blacks. I probably am going to go in later and just further darken those areas, but overall, it was a lot of fun. And yeah, as I said, October is going to be full of villains, horror villains, comic themed horror villains. I'm considering drawing a Morbius, the living vampire. Of course, probably Freddy, Jason, Michael, the classic slasher characters, along with some of the old Universal horrors. Like, I've always wanted to draw a Lugosi piece. Early on, I drew a pretty decent Christopher Lee and a Boris Karloff that I think is still pretty cool. So if you have any suggestions or anything you'd like to see, please leave them in the comments below. I hope that you liked the video, and please click like and subscribe. And in the meantime, keep telling your stories.